I'd share it with some buddies of mine. And, first and foremost, like, I haven't been on a dating app in nearly like 9 years. Like, real talk. Um, I've never even heard of like this single events. I had two friends I know that went to these single events, one in Dallas and then one here in Houston, a coworker of mine. And, they shared their experience with me on it, but I'm not going to entirely go into it at this point in the video. However, I'm going to go ahead and respond to this video first. And then from there, we'll critique it. And without further ado, what's going on?
You better pay attention to me tonight. I'm so fucking sick of this shit. Touch a boob, buy a drink. I mean, it's like very fucking simple.
Okay. So apparently, like, I ain't gonna lie, that she was kind of bad. Like she's a good looking woman, obviously, and she was voicing her frustration about something about touch a boob, buy a drink. So apparently, they got like these single events where like people kind of meet up.
Went to a singles event, and it was 93 women. And I was wondering, like, where's all the dudes?
There's 1,000 singles in attendance. Like, are we all living the same life at this point? Because I've never been in a room with that many single people who even thought that it was even possible. I thought I was like the only one left. I mean, beautiful women, all types, shapes, and sizes. Where are the men? Where are the men? Then again, don't know. Never mind.
Interesting. So I guess there's like these single events they're doing, and like people are going to these to like these little meetups. It's like kind of like musical chairs, speed dating, I guess is what they call it. First and foremost, I think that's pretty cool for them to set up something like this. Most people don't even leave the house nowadays. Everything's online at the push of a button. And so I think it's pretty cool that they're trying to set up something to where they're like trying to get people to meet up and kind of to get these social interactions going again. So first and foremost, I think it's pretty cool. It's a cool concept, cool idea to get people to meet up. Back when I was going to the clubs, back in my heyday, when I was going to the clubs, it would be like the ratio would be like for every one woman, there was like 9, 10 guys. So it was like extreme, unless you went up there with a date, it was extremely hard to just go dancing with random chicks because you just had so many dudes in the club that were just trying to dance with them. And, that was just the way it was. But you still have a good time if you still go out, have a drink, or, get to socialize with people in there. But it was extremely hard to dance with random women because it was just so many guys in the club, Nowadays, I'm hearing it's reverse. There's like more women in these events than there are guys. And that sounds like something out of like a fairy tale book, because back when I was doing all that, it was mostly guys that would mainly fill up these areas. And now it's like a lot different. So I'm going to go ahead and respond to the first clip. And from there, we'll go from there.
Pay attention to me tonight. I'm so fucking sick of this shit. Touch a boob, buy a drink. I mean, it's like very fucking simple.
Okay, so she said buy a drink. So, and look, I look, red flags come up right there, and then I'm gonna tell you why. Because when you're saying buy a drink, are you going to these events because you're actually trying to meet someone, exchange numbers, get to know someone, set up a date, etc., etc.? Or are you just going because you just want some simp ugly guy to buy you drinks? Look, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just keeping it 100 because I know like some of those old tricks because I've seen it before. And it's like, I've been to the bars, I've been to the clubs, scenes, and usually the guys that are buying drinks for these girls are, are usually, you could tell these girls are not really attracted to them, but they're just kind of entertaining them because they want the free drinks. I mean, which, hey, that's cool. I don't have a problem with that. Like, you want your free drinks, all power to you. But it's like you're kind of getting mad that there's no guys that are there, but I feel like you have alternative motives. Like, you're not going to actually meet guys. You're just going because you want free drinks and free attention. Appreciate the like. I'm just saying. I just, you know, that's the vibe that I got from her energy, from what she said. Touch a boob, buy a drink. I'm like, yeah, but I mean, are you really going up there to get to know the guys? Are you really interested in wanting to exchange a number with a guy? Or you just want free drinks? I've seen this so many times. I've even had some of my homegirls would tell me, yeah, they got this sucker. I meant this gentleman taking her out, and they're gonna wine and dine and buy drinks, and she doesn't even have any interest in him. And I would tell them respectfully, well, if you don't have any interest in these guys, why are you even entertaining it? Oh, well, he said he's gonna take me out. I'm like, oh, so you just want you just want the food and the drinks. Okay, all right, I see that. But it's like, then why get mad when these guys starting to catch on to that shit and they're like, okay, so like, why am I gonna show up to these events if you just got a bunch of girls there that have no intention of talking to us and they just want free drinks? I mean, I'm just being 100. That's from my observation from the outside looking, because again, I don't attend these singles events. I don't go to those singles events. I don't really need to go to these singles events. I'm just gonna keep it 100 with you. I know how to talk, so I don't. It's relevant to me. I don't need to go to singles events. To me, that just spells disaster. Like, all over it, written backwards, upside down. It's, yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, it don't even sound right. Like, if you got to go to a singles event to, like, that's set up by some sort of organization, hope to meet. It's like, sounds like I'm in high school again. It's like, nah, I don't really need that. I'll just, I'll go do that on my own. You know what I'm saying? Let's go ahead and respond to the next one.
Okay, so I recently went to a singles event, and it was 90% women. And I was wondering, like, where's all the dudes?
So the thing, going back to this previous woman, she's beautiful too, by the way. All these women are beautiful that I kind of, see their voice their concerns over the men that are not showing up. The last girl, she, not really a red flag, but just more of a thought. If I was, kind of sitting next to her and she was to say, well, it's 90% women. I'm like, okay, well, there's 10% of the guys. Why didn't you talk to any of them? So if there's, 100, well, depending, if there's maybe a couple hundred women, then let's just say there's like 20 men or 30 men that showed up. Then why didn't you just talk to any of them? It sounds like to me, you weren't really attracted to any of those guys that showed up. Which that's fine. But then again, it kind of sends mixed signals, because it's like, well, you just said yourself that 10% of the men, that there were 10% men there. Then my question is, why didn't you talk to any of them? You see what I'm saying? It's kind of a little bit jaded and miscued. The mixed signals I'm kind of getting from these women that are complaining is, it's not the fact that there's no guys that are not showing up. It's they're not attracted to the guys that are showing up to these events. You see what I'm saying? It's not necessarily the fact that there's no men that are there. It's just for the ones who do show up, they're invisible, and these girls have no intentions of talking to them because they're just simply not attracted to them. That's kind of like, let's just rephrase it. AKA, all the guys that are coming up there are ugly, and I have no intentions of speaking to them. Then just say it like that. Say it with your chest out. I've never attended any of these events. I've never, I've heard of stuff like this, like in movies about musical chairs and what do they call it? Speed dating. I've heard of it on movies, but I never actually seen it in real life. I had two friends that went to a singles event, and I was talking to a coworker of mine, And he's like, man, I'm going to this dating event. You know, there's one in Houston. I'm going, it's downtown. It's this date. I'm like, all right, man, let me know how, let me know how it went, So I'm kind of curious, curiosity killed the cat. How do these events work? And then, so when he went there, he told me that, maybe like 20 guys were there. The rest were girls. So it's like the ratio is like 90% women. So, it to like 10% of the guys that were there. So not too many guys were there. And so I said, so what were all the girls doing? He's like, well, they were all mingling with each other, and they really weren't interested in talking to any of us. You could just kind of tell, like in the vibe, and that they weren't really interested, I guess. And so he said he mistakenly, or by accident, he had heard one of them say, well, there are guys up here, but they're all ugly. And he was kind of like standing like 20 feet away, but he can hear it with his supersonic ears, his big Dumbo ears, he heard it. And so he said, he actually told me, he actually walked over there and told her, hey, I heard what you said about us, and I just want to let you know you have no room to talk. You're not really attractive yourself. And he got so pissed off that he actually walked out. And he had told me about it. And I said, so, I said, this kind of, did she say it out loud? Well, no, she was trying to, she kind of was loud, but not really. She thought I heard it. And so I went and confronted her, and I was like, all right. And so, like again, when I was going to the clubs and stuff like that, it was mostly guys and very small percentage of girls. So it was like the guys were having to work to compete to talk to girls. Now it's like, from what I'm hearing, it's like things are in reverse. Now it's like, if you look at all these clubs and all that, it's mostly girls and very small percentage of guys. And I guess if you're an attractive guy, I guess, that would work out for you. If you pop up to the club, you might walk out with 10 numbers. But in hindsight, man, so why do I think this is happening? Right? Like, let's get to the cherry on top. Well, first and foremost, and this is just my opinion on things, it's just, don't shoot the messenger. Okay. I'm trying to be fair. I'm trying to give a fair assessment about this. To me personally, I think that these little setups are kind of like a trap, a thirst trap. So in other words, it's no different than the club. You go to the club, the girls, they want free drinks. And any sucker, gentlemen, will buy them, drinks, and the guys are trying to hit on them. The girls know they're not attracted to most of these guys, so they're not going to give them time of the day. They're just entertaining them for the drinks. Okay, fine. This goes on in the club. So I think of these little setups is sort of the same thing. I think a lot of these girls think that maybe really attractive men are going to show up. And what's happening is you just got a bunch of average looking guys, and they're not really interested in them. And that's okay. Okay, whatever. You don't want to talk to them. That's your personal prerogative. I'm just kind of curious though. You think that the women's standards are a little bit too high? It's not that, again, it's not bad if you have standards. I think, and in fact, I think men need to start having standards. I think a lot of problems with guys nowadays is the fact they lack zero standards. And I think that's one of the biggest issues going on with guys, unfortunately, is that they kind of just seem to talk to anything nowadays and entertain it. I think that men need to start having standards like the girls do. I just think that what it is, I think the girls have, they're getting all this attention, mostly online. And I think what happens is they go out into the real world and they try to apply that in the real world sense. You got the online guys that are trying to hit on you, and you got all these weirdos, and you got some cool ones, and, they're in your DMs and blah, blah, blah. And then when you're out in person, you realize it's like dead, like the whole world is dead. Guys are not approaching women in person like they were back in the day. So they kind of misconstrued the online experience. Well, then this experience is going to carry on into my, when I'm, at these events or whatever. And, I think a lot of the guys now are just not attending these events because I think personally, if you're going, the thing is that if these girls are not really looking for anything, what's the purpose of going? Like, what's the point of me showing up if I know you're just not even giving me the time of the day, or if that's how most men's experience is, you know, if they're just so used to getting rejection after rejection or not a number or this or that, they're going to be like, okay, why do I show up to these events if you're not, if I already know that you're not entertained and that you're just kind of just looking for just free drinks and just to go out and say a bunch of suckers bought you some free drinks, whatever, you know, it's yeah, I think after a while, you just throw, you know, a lot of guys just kind of self-defeat, just kind of throw in this how. I don't think it's right, but that's just the reality of what I think is going on. You know, you got the economical factors too. A lot of people are, the whole inflation, it's expensive to go out, and there's not a lot of jobs going around. And people, you know, guys are not being, they need to focus on their financial success, and a lot of them are still kind of trying to find that niche, and so they're kind of putting off the dating market so that they can try to focus on their work life, and that's fine. I think that that's a very admirable thing to do. I think that men shouldn't be chasing women as much as it used to be, but even at least back then it was a lot cheaper to do so. You know, now it's a lot more expensive. And it's just, you figure by the time you go on 2 or 3 dates and these girls really aren't interested, and you done bought drinks and food and take them out and they're not really interested in you, well, that's basically a car note. You know, you basically just paid a car note. You know, I mean, I get it. You have to take the risk. You have to go out. There's no guarantee that someone's going to like you. And I understand that. But I think what is with guys is they just experience so much of the rejection that eventually they just lose all hope, and they're like, did you say just worth the squeeze? It's not worth the investment anymore. I need to focus on my career path and much less chasing women. And I think that if that is the case, I mean, hey, all power to you. You know, look at the world we're living in now, where the dollar's inflated, the dollar has no value. AI's taken over. A lot of these jobs aren't available. A used car costs just as much as a new car now. You know, rather you have these dating apps, or rather you have these, these little meetups, what they call like single men's events or single events or whatever. Let's just be honest. Dating apps, single events, they've always really just benefited the women. It's not really much for the guys. You know, it's just benefits to me, a certain percentage of men, between probably maybe 20 and maybe 35%, for them to go out, shoot their shot, have an opportunity to exchange numbers. And then the rest of 65% of the guys that are there just kind of left to ponder. And it's just, to me personally, I just don't think the juice is worth the squeeze. Again, I'm an old school guy. I believe, people should interact and mingle, bars, clubs, social gatherings, get together. I think the internet is sort of the devil's playground when it comes to trying to, get a number, unless you've already met the person prior to that, and then you just kind of exchange social media, and then from there, you exchange these social media, and then from there you kind of keep in contact. Then that's okay. But I think, if you're just strictly on these dating apps or whatever, they're just loaded with spam and scammers, and, they're loaded with OnlyFans, and go to my Snapchat and buy 5 photos for 99 cents, or $2.99 special, happy hour special. And this is what you're getting, for most men. Like when I used to go on dating apps back 10 years ago, it was like the best time to get on. People, you could DM somebody, they respond instantly. I mean, there were so many dates I was getting off of OkCupid, Zeus, MocoSpace. I was lined up with dates. You know what I'm saying? That experience is not much more for guys anymore. Now it's like, well, sub to my OnlyFans, sub to my, my Snapchat, or what do they call it? The one that's got the pictures and you pay for it. It's like, the sub to that or whatever. Are you interested in buying content? you see a lot of these pop up, like, are you interested in buying content? You know, and it's just like everything that they're getting on these apps, it has nothing to do with correlating to actually meeting in person. And then you got to meet people in person in these events or whatever. And just to come to find out that they're not really interested in any guys. They just want just some free drinks and just to say that a bunch of simp guys fucking once again suckered out, for the 100,000th time of the month, Hey, look at all these suckers. I meant gentlemen that were nice enough to buy me drinks at the singles event. And then they'll say, okay, well, did you find anybody, at these events? No, there wasn't really any cute guys, but there were some really nice guys that bought me some drinks. You see what I'm saying? And so I think guys just kind of look at that and they're like, okay, this just is not worth it. The juice is just not worth the squeeze. Not worth it. Like I said, I'm more in the social interactions. I like going to concerts. I like going to games. You'll be surprised how many people I mingle with, even like at Bogies and all these other spots I go to. I'm always trading like social medias and stuff with people, getting to know people. So I've really never had a problem with engaging in conversations with people or with women. It's never really been an issue with me. I mean, have I gotten rejected before? Absolutely. Have I gotten butthurt over it? Absolutely. But then again, you're not always gonna, strike gold every time you go out and shoot your shot. Sometimes you're going to get rejected, and sometimes you're going to get rejected in the most rudest ways. And I can understand from the women's point of view because they get a bunch of guys that some of them are very rude or kind of weird, and they'll say some off the wall shit. And I get it. And then sometimes you'll have some guys that are kind of cool and trying to convey a conversation, and then their response that they're getting back from these women is, something very rude and disrespectful. And you're kind of like, okay, I can understand if I was coming at you a certain way, but Jesus Lord, you're going to be rude like that? All right. And so I think what happens is that guys have just, it comes to a point in time when you look at economics and you look at the dating apps, you look at these social gatherings, I think, just guys have just, finally just got together and said the juices isn't worth the squeeze. The juice just isn't worth the squeeze anymore. And it's just, I think that we definitely have a societal problem. I think the biggest problem, in my opinion, is the fact that the communication, just in general, amongst most people is terrible. There's like literally no communication with people. Like even from like your workplace to like your friends to just conveying a mutual understanding of one another, having your intentions known. I think a lot of the times people, they don't want to say what they really want because they think they're going to chase the other person off. And I'm like, to be honest with you, I think it's just in this day and time, I think I think the whole playing the game is done. I think now at the point, you just have to be a straight shooter and just say, this is what I want. And this is, you just have to be correct and direct with people about what your intentions are. And it's just, if they like the program and they want to jump on board, they're more than welcome to. And if not, then they can keep it moving. That's sort of how I look at it. I just say what my intentions are. This is what I want and all this. And I leave it up to the other person if that's what they want to be a part of. And if not, then hey, no harm, no foul. We can go about our business and continue to pursue our, our lifestyle and, live our lives and do our thing, man. But the problem is people don't communicate well at all anymore. There's no communication, I think that's the one thing that's lacking in today's society is people just don't communicate. Everybody gay. I hope not. Everybody, Mr. Captain Anarchy. Well, I mean, I see we got some new people in the chat room, so just want to say what's up. Look, I'm not going to be on this shit all night, you know. Let's see what the last woman said.
1,000 singles in attendance. Like, are we all living the same life at this point? Because I've never been in a room with that many single people who even thought that it was even possible. I thought I was like the only one left. I mean, beautiful women, all types, shapes, and sizes. Where are the men? Where are the men? Then again, don't know. Never mind.
Well, I can tell you this. Now you know how it kind of feels. How like men feel to be ignored and rejected a lot of times. Ladies, now you kind of get a little taste of it. I mean, look, I'm not encouraging it. I'm not saying that that's what you should experience, but how do you think we feel? I mean, this is what men go through all the time. We just don't tell you. You know, I've known some of my guy friends that are like, never even went on a date. I'm like, well, okay, well, you're way more behind than I am because that never happened to me. But I'm just saying that, you know, now you kind of know what it's like, what we experience. You know, it's not the best feeling in the world, is it? Now, you know, again, it's not, you know, again, I think communication is a big thing. I think with women, and this is the part, ladies, that you need to kind of come to an understanding. Okay. What you need to say is that if you know, when she say, okay, well, the guys aren't coming up to us anymore. And so when guys do come up to you, you just don't respond, right? Because this is what ladies do this all the time. They say, no guys are coming up to us. And then when guys try to go and shoot their shots, right? And guys will shoot their shots and they're like, oh, I'm not interested. And it's like, okay, so what was that all about? So it's like, this is what they should do. This is what ladies you should do. What you should say is, if I find you attractive, I'll let you know. And then you shoot your shot. And then I might give you my number, depending on how, you know, on how you communicate with me. And if I feel your vibe and, you know, and things are going well. I think the problem is, ladies, I think that you don't communicate well with the guys, and you give one word blanket answers, and then you expect us to have to understand your language. When I'm simply saying is, why don't you just rephrase it and say, listen, if I find you attractive, then I'll let you know, and then you can shoot your shot. And then if I like it, I'll give you the digits and we go from there. Instead of saying, well, where are all the men at? Well, y'all just said that 10 or 20% of the men are there. It's a small percentage of men. But then if I was to ask you, well, why you didn't talk to any of them? Right? Because if the roles were reversed and I was at a club 10 years ago and it was for every one woman, it was like 10 men. So you had 100 men and 10 women. All the 100 guys still had to go up and talk to those 10 girls. And sure, not all of them were going to get the number. But if the roles are reversed, then why don't y'all just go up to those 10 guys and just see what happens? But the thing is I think what they're trying to say in code language is there's not enough men there, and the men that are here are not attractive. And I'm not attracted to them. And they're just not saying that. I think, honestly, the times we live in now, the whole playing the game and being dishonest, and I think that's all done with. I think now, in the way that we're in today's society, I think you should just be straight, honest, and straight shooter. Just say, look, this is what I want, blah, 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 blah. And just go from there. And what's the worst they can tell you? No. You'll be surprised of some of the answers like you'll get when you're just straight up honest with people and say, this is what I want, and these are my intentions. And you'll be surprised of some people that'll agree with it, even when you think they're not. It's, you know, I think with women that they send these very confusing mixed signals, and then they expect guys to pick up on these cues. And then when they don't, they get upset. And it's like, okay, well, why don't you just say, look, we go to these single events, these dudes aren't showing up, and the ones that are there are ugly, and I'm not attracted to them. So why aren't where, instead of saying where all the men at, just say where are the attractive men at? If you would just rephrase that way, you would be very surprised of the responses you would get. Would be a lot, to me personally, better than you just saying where all the men at. Because if you were to, let's say you were to go into a club and there's like 50 men, and you look around and say, where all the men at? And you got 50 guys that are like, we're here. And then you're like, no, where all the men at? And the 50 guys are like, my hand's up. I'm here. I'm here. And and at the end of the night, you go home and you're like, where all the fucking men at? And it's like, well, there was 50 men there. Why you just didn't give one a chance? And then what really is what she was saying is, it's not the fact that where all the men at because the men are there. It's the fact that where are the attractive men at? Where are the men that I'm attracted to? Why are a bunch of ugly guys here? That's the vibe that I get. And I think women, you should say that. Like flat out, listen, I know it sounds like you're being rude, but I think honestly, you should just be upfront and honest about it. Just say, look, there's no attractive fucking men here. Where are the attractive guys at? I don't think attractive men are really going to go to these singles events. I'm just going to be honest with you. I just think single events are for people that just probably have no game or just probably fucking bored with their time. I just don't see a guy who can get girls would just show up to these dating events. Because if you go into these dating events, that must mean you're lonely. Well, why are you lonely? If you're getting girls, you wouldn't necessarily be lonely. So I think if you're a lonely guy that's going to these events, with no disrespect, no harm intended, no pun intended, no offense to it, you would be going to these events because you probably either lack certain game or you just don't have the communication skill set to be able to ascertain, a further encounter. And I think that the only types of men would be at these dating these singles events would be guys that most likely have no game. Which is okay. And I don't think you're going because there's some sort of starting point for you to have an opportunity to develop something. I think most of the girls that go to these dating events, and this is just my personal opinion for what I'm looking at, they're past their party stage. They're trying to settle down. And they realize that they partied way too much. And they're trying to settle down. And they're hoping to find a guy that shows up to one of these singles events that'll swoop them off their feet. And oh my God, It's like meeting the love of your life from like Zeus or Plenty of Fish or something. One of these websites. So you're just like trying to meet somebody. I think, ladies, I just have to be honest with you. There's nothing wrong with having standards. In fact, I wish the men had standards like y'all did. I think the balance would be a little bit more even in the playing field. I think guys just kind of talk to anything nowadays. I think that's kind of why why a lot of these guys are in the position they're in. But at the same time, I think at times, and I'm trying to find a nice way to put this, but I'm going to be a straight shooter at the same time. So let me go ahead and be a straight shooter here. Ladies, do you ever feel like your expectations or standards are a little bit far-fetched, a little bit out of bounds, a little bit wide right? Because, like for me, I could flip through Playboy and expect Pamela Anderson to show up at my door or Britney Spears, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to happen, right? So, I'm just saying, like, I know that y'all get hit on a lot. I understand that. I understand you've probably gotten some offers, blah, blah, blah. But let's just be honest. Most of your offers are unconfirmed, which means you don't really know if these guys are actually going to stick around or not. Because a lot of guys will say they'll stick around, and that doesn't necessarily mean they will. The problem is, it's not the fact that you can't get men. That's not the issue. That's not the question you should be asking yourself is, well, it's easy to get guys. I hear girls say this all the time, right? Even with some of my homegirls will say, men are easy. It's easy to get men. I'm like, absolutely, I agree. In today's standard, yes. Because men lack standards, absolutely. You get almost any guy you want. I'm not arguing that. That's not the question you should be asking yourself. It's not the amount of men that you can pull. It's the amount of men that you can retain. It's the guy that you want. Can you actually retain that guy? That's the question you should ask yourself. The man that you want, can you retain it? And if so, hey, all power to you. But for a lot of you, based on what I've seen, that is not the case. That is not the case. The case is it's not the fact that you can get men in the bedroom. It's, do you get the men to stay after the fact? That's the question you got to ask yourself. And I say this again with respect. I say this again with no harm intended. It's just my personal opinion, assessment on this. My thoughts. Like the title of the video, I said this is my thoughts. Let me go ahead and would I ever go to one of these events? No, absolutely not. In fact, right now I have a girlfriend, and we actually just started just talking again. That's kind of how we were friends, and then we met off of we actually met off of here. God damn. And then all of a sudden we just, we maintained like a mutual friendship, and then we just started talking out of the blues, and then just boom, we just been yapping on the phone, and just, going out to the movies, going out to get some grub, took her to a couple of midget wrestling events, just been kind of doing the thing. And in fact, I was talking to her before I did this stream, and I was thinking about it, like not even doing the stream, but then she was tired, and I said, well, I'll get off the phone with you, and then I'll just go ahead and get the stream and just start yapping about my thoughts of this shit. Like I said, I haven't been on a dating app in 9 years, 2017. It's been a while, like, since I've been on dating apps. Back then, dating apps were extremely fun and extremely easy to meet people. Now it's not so much the case. It's everything that has nothing to do with actual meetups. It's more like, follow me here, follow me there, pay for this, pay for that, subscription. Or you just got a bunch of scammers or whatever, partridge in the pear tree, whatever. And so I kind of like how they're trying to get people out of the house. I think it's a great concept. I think it's a great idea. I think that, people that are meeting up at, these little events, I think it's cute. I'm going to use a Tom Brady reference, when he's trying to make fun of wrestling. I think it's cute, right? I think it's kind of cool that they're trying to bring back some sort of social interaction. But let's just be honest. The singles event, from what I'm told, you can't even get a number. They encourage you to talk to the app. So basically, they just want you to meet up at these events, pay for the subscription, and go to these events. It's like like Zeus charges. I think it's like every 6 months they charge a fee for you to be on. Well, for the guys, it's the girls always free, but the guys have to pay. So you have to pay for the service or the fee, right? And so I think they're doing that, but with social interactions in person. And I think the problem is that you can't even exchange numbers. It's like, what am I, in fucking high school? You mean to tell me if I'm not into this girl, I can't ask for a fucking number? What the fuck? And so basically what they want you to do is they want you to keep coming to these events because you're lonely and fucking desperate. And they're basically banking on it because you're just going to keep signing up for the services, keep talking to people, keep talking through the apps, and never have intention of meeting anybody or exchanging numbers. It's just a thirst trap. That's all that basically is. It's just a thirst trap for guys. And so I personally, I don't even care if I was single or if I was having a hard time. I wouldn't even be caught dead going to any of these events. The minute you tell me I can't get any numbers, I have no access to change numbers, I'm like, you're fucking crazy, dude. I'm not in fucking high school. The fuck? I'd walk out that bitch so fast. You wouldn't even know what hit you. I dip instantly. I'm like, what you mean I can't pull no numbers? What the fuck is this? What do you mean I can't do that? Oh, well, that's because we want you to use that. Man, fuck the app. I'm already paying for the service, so why does it matter to you? You got your cut. You have your fucking cut. And so they just want just a bunch of thirsty, lonely guys to come up there and just to hope that maybe you might get a number. And in fact, it's just not, because you're just going to talk on these apps, and that's all it's going to be. And if they're like, oh, well, if you want to meet up, we'll meet up at the next singles event, fucking June fucking 2027 and shit. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, hell nah. Like, what the fuck is this? Like, it seemed like we're in high school again. It's like, nah, bro. Hey, it's just crazy. But I think it's a cool idea. If they would let people exchange numbers, then that would be great. And say, look, hey, look, you pay for your subscription for 12 months, no refunds. If you get a number, you get a number. You don't, you don't. And in these sites, they know that. They know they're banking off the male loneliness. They know they're banking off this shit. It's a cash money grab. So they know a bunch of guys are thirsty and desperate online. So they're like, hey, well, since you're already thirsty online begging all day, why don't you come to the website and beg on there and pay, a low price of $54.99 for a 12-month subscription, and you could beg all day to a bunch of bots on there. And it's just, they're not stupid. These sites are not dumb. They'll even set up fake profiles using AI now. And so you'll get a DM from some AI, and they'll say something cheesy and corny, and you're like, wait a minute, I know that's not a regular person. That's got to be AI. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just thirst traps, man. It's just more way to fork money off your loneliness, bro. I think people just need to go back to the old ways, communicating, just, social gatherings. And just go from there, roll the dice, see what the fuck happens. But I personally, man, I wouldn't, I wouldn't be caught dead going to these type of events. I think they're just thirst traps.
I better pay attention to you tonight. I'm so fucking sick of this shit. Touch a boob, buy a drink. I mean, it's like very fucking simple.
It's like, how dare you didn't come to this thirst trap and fucking buy me drinks? How dare you? How dare you, you simp boy? You didn't come up here and buy me a drink. How dare you? It's almost like you could see some of the arrogance. And maybe for her, she kind of deserves to go to these events. Because the minute she starts popping off like that, red flags are going off on me. I'm like, okay, so you have no intentions of really getting to know me. You just want in your mind, ugly guys to buy you free drinks so that you can go home and brag about how you rejected 10 men. And then you're going to say, well, where are all the men at? The men aren't there tonight. And I'm like, well, yeah, there was guys there. It's just you didn't find them attractive. I think just, again, communication is the key. And I think what it is, you ladies should just be honest and say, listen, this is the deal. This is the be honest. I find most men as unattractive. That's okay, whatever. I'm not paying, again, I'm not going to sit here and knock you for it. It's your personal preference. What you're into is what you're into. I'm not going to debate you on that. That's your personal prerogative. What you're into is what you're into. And I'm not going to tell you who I think you should date, who I think you should be with. That's not my part to say, but again, when you're like this super picky person, it's like, what do you expect is going to happen? No one's ever going to meet your threshold. And then you're just kind of, it's the grass is always greener, and I get it. You get hit on a lot. A lot of you ladies are beautiful. You get hit on a lot. I'm not going to sit here and debate with you about that. But again, it's not the fact that you can attract men. Anybody can attract, all these girls, most of these girls can attract guys. That's not, to me, the issue. The issue is the man you want, can you be able to retain it? Can you be able to do that? Can you be honestly be able to say that you can retain a man that you actually want, that you find attractive? And that's going to be the biggest obstacle you're going to have to face. And I think sometimes, we're all a little superficial. I think guys do look at looks, but I think guys are a little bit more simpler. I think they're willing to take a woman who's more or less attractive if she's willing to give him peace. I think men are a little bit more reasonable. I'm not saying that girls can't be reasonable. I'm not saying that girls haven't dated ugly guys or haven't given ugly guys a chance. I'm not saying that, but I will say that I think that off the bat, I think girls are way too picky, and that's from just my personal opinion. Don't shoot the messenger. Don't get upset with me, ladies. If you're listening or watching, it's not to offend you. I'm not trying to stir anything up. I'm not trying to stir the pot. Just giving my opinion to this. I think sometimes you guys are a little bit, your standards are a little bit overzealous. I think it's a little bit, I think your expectations are a little bit too high. I mean, there's nothing wrong with, again, having expectations. I just think that you should have a little bit more of an open mind, and you should be willing to, even if you're not, let's say, attracted to the guys, you could say, okay, well, I'm at this event, there's only 15 guys there, 20 guys there. You know what, fuck it, I'm just going to start talking to these random guys and just, I don't know, I mean, what's the worst thing that could happen? Okay, you don't have to give them your number, you don't have to set up another meeting. You don't got to do none of that. You could just talk to people, and, just sometimes you look at people up front, and you say to yourself, man, I'm not attracted to this person. We've all been there. And then you talk to people. You get to talk to someone for a while and have conversation, and all of a sudden, you tell yourself, man, I actually kind of find this person attractive. Sometimes that happens. I think it's just what it is you're showing up to these events, and the guys that are there, you don't find them attractive right off the bat. So you're like, I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to deal with them. It's like, okay, well, why don't you just talk and mingle just out of common courtesy? You don't have to give a number out. You don't have to give them your social media. You could just say, okay, let's just have a conversation, and from there we'll see where it goes. Hey, what's the worst that could happen? What's the worst that could happen? I get that women are a little bit more on guard because, women can get pregnant, and, they're trying to mate with the best man. I mean, I get the whole cycle, the biological factors as to why, women can justify why they're extremely picky. Okay, fine. Maybe there's past trauma. Maybe there's, some relationships that didn't work out in the past, and I don't know, there's some past relationships there and trauma and stuff, and you're like, you know what? I got to be a little bit more choosier. That's fine. You could be more choosier. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, we live in an economy that's very superficial. And I think men and women can be a little bit guilty of that to a degree. I remember I went on a date with this one girl one time. And when I first saw her, I'm not going to lie to you. Listen, I said, man, she's fucking ugly. Like, I saw her right off the bat. I'm like, God damn, she's hideous, And again, it's just, it's natural human biology to not, if you're not attracted to somebody, you become distinctly turned off. Like, ew. Right? Like, ew, boy, bye, And I was like, man, she's freaking ugly. And I was thinking about taking her home. Like, should I just take her home? Maybe. I don't know. So anyways, we still went out. Something told me just give it a chance. Okay, fine. So we went out and we got something to eat. And believe it or not, like we were getting to know each other and stuff, and we had some really good conversation. And after getting to know her, I said, you know what, man? She's just kind of funny. She had personality, good energy, and I said, you know what? Kind of, she's actually kind of not bad looking. Like, you'd be surprised with like good energy sometimes how it can sway your own judgmental thought process. You know, we are all guilty of that shit. I ain't gonna lie, I was too. I just told you a story. I did that shit. I was like, man, this girl's ugly. And then after I got to know her, I'm like, actually, she's not that bad looking. She's kind of attractive. Kind of funny. Come on, Little Paws, lay down. See, Little Paws the best looking boy in the world. He's the cutest boy in the world. See? He gets all the girls. Anyways, make a long story much longer. Sometimes when you take the time to get to know someone, the energy vibe, I'm real big on energy vibes, like the vibe. And so sometimes we become superficial up front when you first meet somebody, and then that later sort of simmers down as you get to know the person. And then from there you can make the determination, and there's some girls that I met that were extremely attractive up front. And after you get to know them, I'm like, I don't know if I want to be around you anymore. Your personality kind of sucks. You got an attitude or whatever the case, and I ran into them too. But sometimes it takes a little conversation and getting to know people to really determine where you stand with them. You'll be very surprised, You hear all these war stories about, girls will say, especially with the guy they're with now, like, how'd you first meet? Oh, shit, I wasn't attracted to him at all. I thought he was ugly at first. But I don't want nothing to do with him. But then he kept pursuing me, and then, he asked me out, and I said, might as well, and then got to know him, and then boom. They just started seeing each other. Just, sometimes it takes to break the ice and to have simple conversation with people to really, make that determination. If, you can't help who you're attracted to. I agree with that, but you don't necessarily have to, you have to be reasonable. You can't, like, you may be attracted to a bank robber, right? But that doesn't mean he says, hey, on Sunday, we're going out on a date. We're going to go rob a bank. That doesn't mean you have to go rob a bank with him. So sometimes you have to like be within reason. You have to use your mind. I think the biggest problem when it comes to this dating market situation going on in 2026 is that there's just simply not any communication. I think at this point, the whole running game and all that, I think it's childish. I think it's played and it's fizzled itself out. People aren't really going out anymore. So I think the whole running game thing is, completely obsolete. I think the best strategy going forward is just be a straight shooter. Straight, honest. This is what your intentions are, and this is what it is. And then see if you can find somebody along the lines that'll agree to those terms. And I think that's what it is. It could be rather you're just wanting a one-night stand or you're actually looking for something serious. It's just best to be a straight shooter about it. I'm just being honest with you. I think we're just past those times where people are running game and who has the best game and this, and that. I think we're past those times. You know?
Oh, I found out what we could do for tomorrow.
Hold on one second. Sorry about that. I was on mute for a second. I had a conversation. Anyways, no, we live in a superficial world. And people, we judge based on what we see. And sometimes you have to just pull the layers back, get to know people. You would be very surprised on the results. But anyways, so as far as Ben not attending these singles events, I think it just comes down to social economics. I think people are just not leaving the house. It's simple as that. I think people have just been constructed to just stay inside all day. I think we need to get back to those social gatherings again. Just the safe society. We get back to these social interactions. I think it's really the only way at this point that, because remember I said in the video last night, I said I miss the old way of life where people used to just go out and stuff. The whole COVID thing, when this whole thing got shut down, it completely changed the whole world. People are not going out anymore. So it's like you go to most clubs now, hardly no one goes up there. And if it is, it's mostly women. Very small percentage of men are going out. It's the game has changed. I just think communication is key and vital. And if we're not communicating with each other, then there's going to be some problems, And I don't mean this disrespectfully, but I observe the way that people speak at times. And at least either half the people I run into, or if not, maybe slightly more, lack communication skills. And I mean just a simple conversation. You would be very surprised. Many people lack communication skills. They don't know how to talk. And it's like sometimes I'm trying to figure out what they're saying. And it's like, even especially from guys, for example, some of my guy friends or guys that I normally meet up with, you could tell they lack basic social skills. And it's like, sometimes I'm kind of like, what did you just say? I'm like, okay, I was just trying to figure that out. Okay, never mind. Or sometimes you could tell they lack experience. The problem is that most people are staying in the house nowadays. And so they do the online thing now. Everybody's online. And so it's cool when it comes to you being smart when it comes to computer knowledge, streaming, video games, whatever, nothing wrong with that. But the problem is now you don't have a lot of people out going outside of the house to social gatherings and being able to, go back to the old traditional style where people actually had to conversate, where people have conversations and communicate. So what now you're getting is just a bunch of people that are just socially awkward. Socially awkward. I think that's what we're missing. I just think communication is very big, and I think at this point you just have to be straightforward and say, this is what I want. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I find you attractive. I want you in every way. This is what I want. This is what it's going to be. And it's just, they can either be on board of it or not. I just think being a straight shooter is the best way to go. I said, this is what I want. Look, flat out. I think people respond better to honesty, like just straight up forwardness, just being straight up forward. I think it's, people view it as confidence. They say, hey, look, we see a confident person right here. They're assured of themselves, what they want. Sure, I may not like it, but I'm willing to try it. And it's just like, I think people like that confidence. It's just that you know what you want. And you just flat forward with it. Well, it's over an hour. And yesterday I had I think 30 something people in my live stream, and then I had 400 views. This video, may only get 100 views. 200 maybe if I'm lucky on a rainy Sunday. And, just it is what it is. But I think it's a cool concept that they're getting these little social gatherings back. I think it's pretty cool. I think it's a good way to sort of get people into going out again. But, would I ever catch myself going to these events? No. I don't really need to. But if I was single, would I do it? Nah. If I'm gonna do the interactions again, I'd probably I would go back online before I would go do the, singles men events or singles events is what they call it. I would just go back on the internet and roll my dice there. Well, anyways, it's been an hour. Just wanted to do an hour video on this and give my opinions. I think I gave a fair assessment. I don't think I was going too out of bounds with it. I think I gave a fair assessment. What do you guys think? Think so? I thought I was fair. I didn't blame anybody. This is what I think's happening. And there you go. All right, guys. Well, I'm heading out of here so fucking tired. I'm going to bed. See you again for another live stream tomorrow.